Grace and peace to each of you in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Um, wanted to share some thoughts with you about Advent as we are kind of halfway through we're getting 3/4 of the way through Advent. And this season we've been studying about various elements of the Advent story and how it relates to us here in this day as we're trying to worship God. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the prophecies that show up in the lectionary at Christmas time during the season of Advent. And then last week, we explored some thoughts about music. And all of this was connected to the Zoom discussions we've been having within the congregation. But this week, we're 1 week away. So next week is Christmas Eve and Christmas. So our last Zoom is tomorrow. But I wanted to talk with you all about the family of God, the idea of the family of God, and figure out some things that are going on in that idea at Christmas time during the Advent story. And, I don't know about you, but just about everybody has family traditions during the holidays. And that's what holidays are, right? They are routine times that come around, special times that come around regularly to help us remember, to help us celebrate, to help us commemorate. And they carry with them some of the big ideas. I saw this was on Twitter, I guess, yesterday. I saw a little greeting from Kamala Harris and her husband, Doug, I think. I forget his last name. And I didn't realize that he was Jewish. And so they were sharing a Hanukkah holiday greeting. And in the process, saying what it meant to them. What did it mean to them that they were celebrating Hanukkah? And so every holiday has traditions, right? The other thing I saw the other day, I saw a photograph of a Facebook friend, and she grew up. I grew up in the same church with her daughters back home in West Virginia. And the picture that she shared was from her circle group, her United Methodist Women's circle group. And my comment to her was, "Oh, I recognize that room." And that's because it's the living room of the house I grew up in. And so part of the Christmas tradition for me was Mom's circle coming around for Christmas party every December. And everything she did to get ready for it every year. And all the things we had to do to kind of help out or at least get out of the way. And these traditions, of course, are really highlighted this year because they're harder to come by, and maybe they're not happening for you this year. And some of them aren't happening for me this year either. And it gives an opportunity, however, to take account of what those things mean to you. How many times do we take them for granted? Well, this year we're not taking any of it for granted. And I think that when we come back, as the vaccines are rolling out, I think as we come back, our traditions will come back with great fervor. And we will have to rededicate ourselves to the meanings of those traditions in the process. Yeah, that picture from the circle. Of course, I recognized my living room growing up, but I also recognized that for many of us, the church is an extended family. And in some cases, the family of our church family is more fruitful or more joyous or more meaningful to us than our blood families. We share faith, we share experiences. We're usually in the same locale. whereas we might be far distant from our blood relatives. And so there's always been this kind of tension between blood family and the family of our faith. And that goes back generations and generations and generations. Thinking about family at Christmas time, I made mention of this in the sermon this past week. The Christmas story starts Matthew chapter 1 with the genealogy of Jesus. And I don't have it in front of me, actually. The genealogy of Jesus follows this pattern of 14 generations between Adam and Abraham. The next 14 are between Abraham and the exile, including King David, and then 14 from the exile to Jesus. And so the whole Christmas story starts with the family tree. And what's amazing about this is some of the things that are happening kind of culturally and significantly within that list. You probably have heard that there are 4 women, Rahab, Tamar, Mary, and Ruth, right? That are mentioned deliberately in is it Rahab, Tamar, or Bathsheba was one of them too. I think Tamar. I think I may have Tamar wrong. I can't remember. I should have it in front of me. But 4 women, 2 of whom were Gentiles, and just how notable it was to have a genealogy with the women mentioned. They the women played significant roles in those generations, of course. Ruth, she has a whole book dedicated to her about that story. But becomes the great grandmother of King David. And also, so the fact that they're Gentiles and the fact that there are women, kind of gives a clue that the family of Jesus, probably a lot like yours, is a real mixed bag. But then you also have things like, you have a king, you have King David. He's part of King David's family. And you have a lot of peasants. You have a lot of, you even have kings who were responsible for us being sent into exile, the family being sent into exile to Babylon. But the last 2 more things about this genealogy, I think it's 2 more. One of them is that it connects Jesus to Adam, almost like letting the reader know that this thing that's about to happen with Jesus, or that Matthew's writing in the past tense, he's writing retrospectively. This thing that happened with Jesus is as important as creation. It's like creation. The world started all over with this guy. And the other thing was the way. The other part is Abraham. Jesus is not only This is not only as important as creation; it's as important as the birth of our nation, which is the whole point of the Old Testament, was the birth of our nation. And the last part of that land into exile, and the redemption thereof. And so that these generations in Jesus' genealogy are divided up in such a way to signal to the reader that Jesus is as important as creation, is as important as the founding of our nation, and is as important as redemption itself. And so there's that. Okay. I don't know about you, but most churches that I've been to have kind of glossed over the genealogy, and it's understandable. There's a few other things going on with this notion of family in the in the Advent story. There was a census. Is how the story goes. There was a census, and that's what led Mary and Joseph to make the hike, the trek, by camel or otherwise, from Nazareth to Bethlehem, down there near the city of David. And you had to go to the place of your heritage. So when Mary and Joseph go to Bethlehem, they're going to a city that is full of relatives. They're going to a city that is full of cousins and aunts and uncles. That's their family, and everybody in that town at that moment is related. Everybody, it's a family reunion. That's what it means to be of the city of David. It's a family reunion. And so, we make note of the fact that Jesus was born in the stable or in the shack, the shed attached to the back of the inn where the animals are. We make note of that. We do. We talk about that all the time, right? Jesus was born around all the animals. We have hymns about the animals. But I don't think that we fully pay attention to the fact that they wound up there due to a whole extended family choosing to shun them. That was a shunning, I believe. So this notion of the family of God gets threatened almost from the very beginning. I mean, Jesus is here to redeem the people of God, and his entrance into the world is shrouded in this rejection, just utter rejection. Sometimes, and I've done this plenty of times, I think of the innkeeper as a saint. But I wonder if there's just more to it, more gravity to what's going on there. A couple of things about this notion of family in the Advent story is the last folks to show up, and they show up not at the birth, but a couple years later. They show up looking for Jesus, and these are the wise men, the wise kings, the magi's from the east. They are from a different land. They are from a different place, and they happen to be astrologers and astronomers, and happen to notice the Christmas star and recognize there was a sign. So they came, as the story goes. They searched. They went to Jerusalem first, and then wound up in Bethlehem, and found Jesus by following the star. Follow the star to Bethlehem. Oh, those are shepherds. Sorry. We'll talk about them in a second. But this notion of the wise men, they're not Hebrews. They're not Israelites. They're not Jewish. They're not part of the family. They have no business at all in that land, other than they are here to worship and to pay homage to a new king. And it's really interesting that they're paying homage to a new king as Gentiles. It's almost like, we will follow this guy. He may only be not very old, but this is who we need somebody new. We need to get somebody new in here. And so this notion of like the family of God, including people outside of the current family, right? Most religions, most faiths have a certain love and appreciation for membership. And for some, membership is a matter of purity, right? If you're a member, then you believe the right thing, you practice the right way, you've confessed all the sins, and you decide to live a righteous life, and that's what makes you a member. You decide to live the righteous life. But throughout Judaism, from the Tower of Babel on, almost, there has been this kind of kind of purity thread. It's been a timeline, a kind of a storyline in the story of the people of the Hebrew people, in which they need to keep the nation pure. They need to um, keep out any adversaries, any foreign adversaries, because they will mess up the promise. They will mess up the covenant. And God didn't give them the covenant. God gave us the covenant, and we have to keep the covenant by keeping pure. And so the notion that like the family, Jesus' actual extended family, welcomed him with cold shoulders, and then to have these magi from the east come in with gifts suitable for royalty. It just sets the stage for this upending of what the family of God really entails. I have a lot of notes on this, but I just wanted to think about this because family is such an integral part of Christmas, and we think about Mary and Joseph and the baby. It's this very almost picture perfect kind of nuclear family. Um, we don't lose any of the splendor of Christmas by opening up our understanding of these three people, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. Um, so when I say like Jesus doesn't belong to the perfect family, in fact, Jesus comes to upend this notion of family in some ways, and he comes to upend it by expanding it greatly. We don't lose anything in the splendor of Christmas by expanding our understanding of these things. I think later on in Jesus' life, he comes to embrace everybody that's part of this Advent story. He embraces those who shun him. He winds up embracing. He embraces those who are peasants, like his parents. He has a notion of the children of Abraham that he's a part of. So when he's healing those out who are sick, who are disabled, who are outside of the promise, who have somehow been cursed by God, he often refers to them as children of Abraham. He has regard for Samaritans who are in their own whole category outside of the promise. And Jesus extends the definition of the family of God. And I love that the wise men seem to stand at they are kneeling in front of Jesus, and in the process they're kind of emblems of the extended family of God and in waiting. They're the extended family of God in waiting. And as the story of Jesus unfolds in his life, we find people like these magi. We find that they get included. So, what are your traditions? What are your family traditions? What are you missing out on this year? What are you? What traditions have you been able to preserve, or what have you been able to reimagine? You can put comments below if you'd like. You can, if you're part of the congregation and want to be in the Zoom, you can just be prepared. That's what the conversation is going to be like tomorrow night, Thursday night. And yeah, so this notion of the family of God, there's a lot going on in this Advent story, and it adds so much layer and contrast and depth and beauty and drama to the Christmas story. And so as we are getting in closer to the day, keep your eyes and your ears open for this notion of the family of God and all the great things that Jesus is doing just by showing up. All right. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you. See you soon.